Congratulations on selecting a Security Central keyless entry system to help you manage your facilities. You are going to love the way that it enhances both your security and your convenience as you learn to manage your doors remotely through our web portal. Your system can do a lot. We don't expect you to memorize everything the first time you view this, so please keep this video handy. And if you prefer the written word, we have a how-to document that you can download from our website at securitycentralinc.com on the Resources tab that will walk through the same type of information. And we provided the table of contents here so that you can jump ahead to different segments of the video to refresh your memory on particular functions of your system. So sit back, watch, enjoy, and if you have any questions, give us a call. The first thing you'll need to know to properly manage your new keyless entry system is how to access the Keyless Entry Management web portal. You will do so by first coming to the Security Central homepage. That's located at securitycentralinc.com. Once you're on this page, you can access the Keyless Entry Management portal from 2 points, either the Customer Login tab here or the Current Customers tab here. Either will take you to the option for Keyless Entry Management. Once you select that option, you'll be prompted to enter your username and password. We will assign that username credential for you and give you a temporary password, which you will then want to change the first time you log in to the system. I'll show you how to do that. So once you log in with your temporary password, first thing you want to do is come up to Settings in the upper right corner here. Select Settings and then Profile here. And you can then enter the current temporary password followed by your new preferred password. Hit the Change Password tab and your new password will then be in place. Then come back to the Home tab here and we'll be ready to learn about how to manage your system. One thing I'd like to point out here on this home page is you get a quick summary of your status of your doors. So it tells you how many system doors you have and whether they are secured, meaning locked, or unlocked. In our case, for this demo system, we don't have real doors hooked up, so it says I don't know what the status of the doors is because they don't exist, but in your case you would normally see the status here. I want to point out that these options for lock all doors, unlock all doors should never be used. These are very heavy-handed commands that are intended for situations like a school shooting lockdown situation. If you hit lock all doors, not only does it lock the doors, it actually locks out the readers so that readers cannot be used and your employees would all be locked out of the building. So do not use these heavy-handed options. Door control will be handled here, and we'll talk about that later in this video. One of the most common functions that you will want to need to do is adding or deleting cards or fobs for either new employees coming on board or possibly terminated employees that are no longer going to be part of the company. For that process, you will use these two tabs. The Cards tab, where we control the details about each individual card, and please note whether it's a card or a key fob, it doesn't matter, they refer to them as cards and they function the same way. And then you have the card holders, which are the people who actually use those cards. I like to always start with the people first. So if you're adding a new employee, I would recommend that you come to the Card Holders tab. That shows my current employees or card holders. All of these screens only show you a limited amount of information at one time to boost performance and speed of the process. So notice it's showing you here that you have 2 pages of this information. We're currently looking at page 1 of 2. I can use the forward button here to jump to the next page, and I see that I have 3 more employees on page 2. I can jump back to page 1 this way. I can also search by different fields such as first name or last name and type in the employee name here. If you have lots and lots of users, that might be faster than scrolling through all the different pages. But if I'm going to add a new employee, I will click on Add New here and then enter the first and last name. I hope that you have lots of employees that you consider like Superman, so we will use Clark Kent. Once you enter the new employee's name, you will see down below here a list of cards that are available to be attached or given to this new employee. These unassigned cards are typically sitting in a desk drawer somewhere. They should be in an inactive state so that if somebody gets a hold of them, they can't actually use the card. But you can see here that I have 3 cards available, different numbers. I can select any one of them and assign it to Clark by simply hitting the arrow over here to bring it to the assigned card. So a card 1002 or 10,002 is now assigned to Clark Kent, and I save this information. We're only part way done, so we have simply linked Clark's name with that card. Now I need to come over to the Cards tab and give Clark the appropriate permissions, or more specifically, access level, as well as the card status, meaning is it active or inactive. So I can see Clark Kent is listed here. If he was not, again, I could search up here based on the card number that I assigned, or change the field to his name and enter the information here. But seeing it right here, I click on the edit icon, the little pencil and paper, and that will then populate in the lower part of the screen his card information, his card number, the current status, which shows it's inactive, which means it will not work to open a door, shows what the access level for this card was previously assigned to, and we can change that, and it shows me the expiration date of when that card was made inactive, and that's going to be really important when we go to activate it. So with Clark being a new employee, the first thing I'm going to want to do is activate the card. So I can select active. Second thing I need to do is decide what permission level does he need. The access levels are set on a separate tab, and your Security Central account rep should have already worked with you to help create those initial access levels, but in this case we have a few different ones for clerical employees, exterior door and R&D access, full access, meaning they can go anywhere, anytime, lab access, meaning they can only go into the lab, or temporary employees. We could look and see what their access levels might be. But we're going to say that Clark is a full access person, so I would select full access, means he can come and go through any door at any time. And it's really important to remove this expiration date. This is a really easy mistake to make for people. If you just save right now, this card will still not work. Even though it says it's active, because there's an expiration date that occurred in the past, the system will recognize that that card has expired and not work. So I need to hit the clear button there to remove the expiration date, and then hit save. Once I do that, this card for Clark is now active, so it shows in the status here as active, shows his access level is full access, and he will now be able to use that card at any door at any time during the day. Well, not all employee relationships work out the way that we want, and sometimes who we thought was going to be Superman ends up being super dud, and you have to terminate that employee, or they terminate on their own. But in either case, you're going to want to remove them from your keyless entry system. So in our example here, Clark Kent is no longer with the company, so we first want to try to get his card back so we could reuse it and reassign it to someone else, or maybe he took off and flew away without giving the card back to us. So in either case, we need to inactivate it using our same Cards tab here that we set him up on and gave him the active authority. So we're going to come back to Clark Kent here. Again, if he was not on this screen, I could search for his card number or name up here and it would find him. I'm going to hit the edit icon here. That will again populate his information in the lower portion of the screen, and the first thing I want to do is simply change it to inactive. Notice you also have an option here of lost or stolen. The difference is if you just select inactive, that assumes you got the card back successfully and it gives you the ability to assign it or attach it to another employee in the future. If you select lost or stolen, it does inactivate the card, but it also keeps it hidden from the list of available cards for the future. So in this case, we're going to assume that we got the card back from Clark before he flew away. So I simply make it inactive. It automatically puts the expiration date in down here, which is technically what causes it to be inactive, and I simply hit save. That card is now inactive. It will not work to open a door. If I now come over to card holders, the card holders tab here on the top, and I have my Clark Kent card holder reference here. Again, I hit edit on Clark, and I want to unassign or unattach this card from Clark. So I highlight the card, I click on the left arrow button, which brings it over into the unassigned cards, and that card can now be, once I hit save, that card can now be kept in a desk drawer and reassigned and reattached to a future employee that you hire to replace Clark. I now want to at least briefly review the couple of other tabs, access levels and time schedules, so that you can at least be aware of them, even though you will use these less often. So we're going to talk about access levels. So the access level, if you remember from when we were setting up cards, gives the appropriate permissions to an individual card to tell it when it can work and on what doors it can work. So in our example here, we have a number of access levels set up, and I'll show you how they control what the card is able to do. So we have a clerical access level. If I click on the edit button to the left here, it will populate the information in the lower portion of the screen, and I can name the access level. I can give it a longer description as well. So we named it clerical, and a description saying it gives access to the office doors only. Well, how does it do that? It's based on applying a time zone to each of the doors. So in the case of this employee back door, it says never on, which means, okay, if your card has a clerical access level, you can never use it at the employee back door. It will never let you in that door. It will only let you in the front door during the employee access time zone. So for instance, in our time zones, if we were to look at those up here, we had a regular business hours that automatically unlocked the door at, I believe, 8 to 5, and the employee access, I think, started like at 7 a.m. So this says this card will work only on the front door beginning at 7 a.m., so they can't come in the middle of the night, and then at 8 a.m. the door would unlock anyway. So this is a way that you can restrict who goes where. A clerical access level will not let them go into the IT server room or the lab room. If we instead compare that to full access, if I click on the edit button for full access here, and it loads the full access information below, this is showing us that it's going to have 100% building access 24/7, anytime, anywhere, any door, and you'll see each of the doors has an entrance time zone of always on, meaning that card is always able to go through that door. So this would be for management level people. The lab access, if we look at this example, we'll see that they have no access through the front door or the IT room, and also not the employee back door, but they can get into the lab only during those employee access hours. Also, let me point out that none and never on mean exactly the same thing functionally. It means that there's no time zone applied, so there's never the ability to use that card successfully on any of these doors. Likewise, if you do the drop-down box, always on again means it can always be used at those doors. So again, just wanted to show you how you can adjust an access level. You could decide that, oh, I do want lab access to also have access to the IT server room, so you would come here and say, okay, I'm going to add the employee access hours and hit save, and that would then change anybody with lab access authority assigned to their card under the cards tab would now be able to go into the IT server room and into the lab door during the employee access schedule that we set up under time schedule tab. So we'll talk about that next. Again, you probably will not change time schedules real often, but it's important to understand how they work and know that you can adjust them as needed. So as I mentioned previously, the always on means it's always active, and that's usually going to be applied to the access level of a card for a management level person to say you can always come through this door. But we can also set up more restrictive time schedules, such as our business hours here. So when I click on the business hours edit icon, it populates the business hours information in the lower portion of the screen. Again, I can label or name the schedule. I can give it a longer description. I like to have in the description kind of exactly what it is, so at a glance you know, oh yeah, this is Monday through Friday 9 to 5, and I'm using the schedule for the front door to be unlocked. You can see it demonstrated graphically here in our 24-hour bar here and the 7-day week schedule. So it's showing that Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. here till 5 p.m. there is when that schedule will apply. If I click on any of the days, it shows me specifically. I can go in and modify it here to say, hey, I want to open at 8 a.m. instead. I need to hit update here, and that will then modify it to say on Mondays we're going to open early at 8 a.m. but on Tuesdays through Fridays we're still going to unlock the door at the regular 9 a.m. time. Or I could also copy Monday to the other weekdays if I wanted to apply that same rule, or I can say, oops, nope, I didn't mean to do that. Let me go ahead and change that back to 9 a.m. And again, remember to always update that. And when I'm all done making my changes, really important, I have to scroll down to the bottom and hit save to make sure that I save those changes. Otherwise, it won't do what you wanted it to do. So again, this is where you set up schedules. The schedules will apply to cards and when the card is able to be used successfully. It will also apply to doors of when a door should be unlocked. So in the case of the business hours, we had that applied under doors to unlock the front door. In the case of employee access, we had it applied under the access levels to say I only want employees to be able to come in between the hours of 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, or 7 to noon on Saturday. So if I click here, you can see it demonstrated graphically, and that way if one of the employees, staff level employees, tries to come in either late at night, super early in the morning, or on a Sunday, it is not going to unlock the door for them. Whereas if I have always on applied to the access levels for all the doors of the management level people, they'll be able to come in at any time. The other thing to be aware of is you can schedule holiday functionality. So if you wanted to have either no access on holidays, which is what this shows, since there are no hours on holidays shown, you would not have any accessibility on holidays, or you might have different hours on holidays that you could apply, and then you can build a list of what days you have holidays by clicking on holidays here and telling it which days of the year the holiday schedule will apply to. We love celebrating Dave's Day and also Thanksgiving in our example here. But time schedules are a great way to, again, control when a card can work or when a door can be locked or unlocked. The next thing that you'll want to do on a fairly regular basis, most likely, is control your doors. So I'm going to jump over to the Doors tab here and select Doors. In my case, again, this test system does not have real doors attached to it, so I have question marks showing here because it doesn't know the status of the doors. In your case, you'll see little lock icons here that show whether the door is locked or unlocked. So just pretend with me, if you will, that we have real doors here. This screen is divided into two sections. The upper section is the automated door schedule or automated control of that door, and the lower portion of the screen here is the manual control of the door. So let me explain. Over here you can set the unlock schedule for any or all of your doors. You can have some doors stay locked all the time. So in this case, our employee back door example has no unlock schedule, so that door would stay locked at all times. You would always have to use your card to get in. The front door, however, is set up to have a schedule of regular business hours. Those schedules are shown on the Time Schedule tab, and your Security Central rep should have helped you set those up initially. But in this case, let's assume the business hours are 8 to 5, and this says tell the front door to unlock automatically at 8 a.m. and then lock automatically again at 5 p.m. because those are our business hours. You can have a different schedule for other doors. So the IT server room we have set up as an employee access schedule, and again that would be defined in the Time Schedule tab, and so that door will unlock and lock automatically based on whatever that schedule is, and the lab door has no schedule, so again it stays locked all the time. If you want to change that, for instance, say we don't want the IT server room opening automatically, we want to keep it locked all the time, you would select the box here, which I cannot do because I don't have a real door, and you would then remove the schedule, selecting none, hit this send command, and it would send the new information to the panel saying do not unlock that door based on a schedule. You also from time to time will want to manually control the doors using the lower portion of the screen here. You'll want to either unlock a door that is normally locked or maybe lock a door that is normally unlocked at this given time. So in this example, let's say our employee back door that stays locked at all times, we want to unlock it because we've got movers coming in and out bringing in stuff for us. So what I can do is I can send an unlock duration command. I want to emphasize this. In the manual control, the only command you ever want to use is the unlock duration. The reason being, these other commands are permanent commands. If you say unlock the door, it stays unlocked forever. If you say lock the door, it stays locked forever. You don't want to override the normal schedule permanently that's set up here. You only want to override it temporarily, and that's what the unlock duration does, both for unlocking a door and locking a door. But in this case, we're going to talk about unlocking the employee back door. So we're going to select our back door up here. Again, we would check the box there. We would then select unlock duration and say we want to leave it open for the next 4 hours because that's when the movers are going to be working here, and I send the command here. Again, I don't have any real doors selected, so it gives me an error message. That would then send a command that tells that door, because I checked the box here, to stay unlocked for the next 4 hours, and at the end of that 4-hour period it will send another command saying lock that door again and return it back to its normal schedule here, which in this case is no schedule at all. It stays locked at all times. So that's fairly intuitive. What's not so intuitive is you want to use this same unlock duration to actually lock a door. So in the case of our front door, it's normally open and unlocked during business hours, but if a heavy snow is coming in and you're going to shut down the office early and send everybody home, you don't want to leave with that door unlocked, so you want to send a lock command to it, but you don't want it to be locked forever, which is what this would do. You want it to only be locked for a while until the next time it's supposed to unlock. So if you do an unlock duration of just 1 second, what that does is it will send an unlock command, but of course the door is already unlocked, and so 1 second later it will send a lock command. Again, I would have to check the box for the door and then hit this send command here, and that would effectively lock the door in 1 second. It will stay locked then until the next scheduled time that the door is supposed to unlock, which would be the next morning during regular business hours. The next day, if you're all snowed in and you're not going to open the office, you don't want that door to unlock, so you could do a couple of things. You could either come in and remove this schedule if you were doing it before the regular open time, or again, you could send an unlock duration of 1 second, which would then send that command to lock the door after 1 second, and it would stay locked through the rest of the day until the following day when the business hours said, hey, open up at 8 a.m. So this is a great screen to either automatically schedule when your doors should be locked or unlocked, or to manually control when you want a door to be locked or unlocked. So you'll really appreciate the ability to control those doors remotely. It's an awesome way to manage your building. Now we're going to talk about how to run reports, how to get information out of the system that will be helpful to you as you manage your business. There are lots of reports that you can run, but the one that you will use most all the time is the card history report, because that's the history of when cards were used to tell you when somebody came in through a particular door. In most cases, when you're running a report, you're trying to solve a mystery, and I have found that those mysteries fall into one of two categories. Either you know who the person is that you're interested in, and you want to find out where have they been going. So in that case, you would run a report based on the card holder and see all of their activity. The other option or likely scenario is you know where a problem occurred, but you don't know who was involved in it. So in that case, you're probably going to run a report based on the door or the reader. So for instance, in our test example here, we might have had something happen in the lab, and we would want to see who came in the lab. This would give us a filtered report of only activity of people coming into the lab, so we could find out who was the last person in here, who came in here last night, that kind of thing. So in these two scenarios, if we run a report based on a person, you can either look it up by card number and say it's equal to this and key in their card number, or you could look them up by name and say I'm looking for first name of John or whatever. And then you probably also want to add a date filter, so you would check the box for date as well, and say I'm only interested in today's date, or I could say I want everything that is, pardon me, greater than the first of the month. So if I'm not exactly sure what day I'm looking for, I can select that and say anything greater than the first of the month for the card holder that I select here, which would be our not so Superman employee, and I could then run a report based on all of his activity from the first of the month on, and in this case I would not want to restrict it to an individual door, and that would then give me, when I hit display report down at the bottom here, all of the activity for Clark Kent from the beginning of the month, so I can see what doors he came in, when he came and went, was he showing up late for work each day, that type of thing. That can be really helpful. Or like I said, in another scenario, I might say, hey, something happened last night in the lab. I would select which door I want to look at, which is the lab. I'm only interested in today's date, so I could select today's date, and then when I hit display report down here, it would show me who came in to just the lab just since midnight today, and I could then go talk to them and say, hey, what happened to that piece of equipment, or why didn't you clean up, or whatever the case may be. So reports are really helpful, the card history report being the one that you will use most often to solve those mysteries of who did something or where it occurred. The other thing to be aware of is the first time you run a report, it may not display anything because your web browser may have a blocker on it, and you'll need to go up into the bar up on top and say allow that pop up from this source, and then rerun the report, and it will then pop up then. So reports are really helpful to get the information out of the system of who's coming and going and doing what. So with that, you now have all the tools you need to properly manage and administer your keyless entry system. When you're all done making any changes or checking in anything on your system, you can simply click the logout button to log out and return back to our Security Central website, where we have lots of other great information available under resources and support. So feel free to give us a call if you have any questions, and enjoy having a more safe, secure, and convenient facility.